6 months is a very long time in this industry, right? A lot can happen in 6 months. 6 months ago, people were talking about how to survive COVID, but I think 6 months from now, you're very much going to be in a post-COVID world. So, there were some discussions in our panel today about geography, about sectors from a geographic standpoint. There was a bias towards our audience and our virtual audience thinking that there will be a skew towards Southeast Asia, excluding Singapore, in terms of hot sectors. But our panelists seem to have alternate viewpoints in thinking that China and India is where we'll see much of that activity. From a sector standpoint, though, we did have a good discussion around hospitality, around travel, which I think on average it's what people are thinking about in terms of where demand for the credit market will be. But our panelists were also happy to chime in on areas of TMT. I think there was real estate as well, especially in terms of high-end luxury hotels and that of the like.
Singapore is well positioned to become a restructuring hub for the region in 2021. We have had the IRDA, the Insolvency, Restructuring and Dissolution Act, which came into force last year in July. That has codified and made clear certain aspects for restructuring, like rescue financing super priority, as well as the application of the model law to Singapore, and other aspects for restructuring. On top of that, I think we see Singapore attracting headquarters of many global companies to deal with the Asian regions. We also have more family offices, as well as tech companies coming to Singapore. So I think we're going to see more money as well coming in, looking at deals, possible restructuring deals, distressed debt. And so I see Singapore developing more as a restructuring hub for the region in 2021.
I think the main trend is going to be in the area of new money coming in to bail out existing bank lending that has gone into these distressed situations. I think that we will see more transactions in the special situations distress space, and I think that we are likely to see an uptick in insolvency proceedings, particularly in places like Singapore. Part of that will be driven by businesses which have failed because of their fraudulent business models, or businesses which do not have genuine underpinnings. So, for example, businesses that borrow to recycle cash and really treat this cash as if they were profits. I think those will very rapidly go into insolvency situations. I think for businesses with a more sustainable business model, there will likely be some creditor appetite to find ways of restructuring these businesses so that they can carry on as going concerns and so that creditors can have positive recoveries.
Two main trends that are going to arise. The first is an increase in shareholder appraisal litigation, and this is because stock prices are quite low at the moment. There are a lot of cheap deals out there, and there will be statutory mergers that will be undertaken that minority shareholders are going to be unhappy about. As a result, it means that they are going to want to enforce their rights because they will believe that the deal doesn't reflect the true value of the company on a medium or longer term basis. I think the other trend is going to be in third-party funding litigation, particularly in jurisdictions like the Cayman Islands, where they have not only recently enacted legislation which confirms the ability to bring third-party funding claims in the jurisdiction, but in addition, they've allowed lawyers to be able to perform the work on a contingency fee basis. And there's very few jurisdictions in the world where that's allowed. A contingency fee means that the lawyer can claim a percentage of the proceeds, and as a result, I think that's going to lead to a lot more litigation.
What we've seen last year as a result of COVID is a lot of pent-up stress. Governments have provided a lot of support. Banks have gone very easy on borrowers because of the COVID environment. Legislation has come in most jurisdictions that have prevented banks from taking enforcement steps. So whilst there's been a busy environment, we haven't seen, I think, what's coming in 2021. Probably later in 2021. There's a lot of companies that have depleted their working capital and don't have access to new facilities. And without the ongoing government support and without the legislative protection, there's going to be substantial distress and insolvency. Some companies are just not going to be able to survive this pandemic, and there's going to be a substantial increase in that in the second half of 2021.
I would say threefold. One is, of course, the impact of the pandemic. We have not yet fully recovered from the pandemic, and I suspect this will continue till for this year and slightly beyond. A lot of businesses will need rescue funding, a bit of extra last mile funding to revive their businesses from the impact of COVID. I would think that is the first trend that you would see. The second trend, in my mind, is the prevalence of global interconnection between businesses. In almost every large business that has failed internationally, we have seen the global interconnections coming into play. That will become even more acute, given that the insolvencies that we will see in this period are in the backdrop of heavy international trade in recent years. The third trend that I think the restructuring and insolvency landscape will see is a strong emergence of alternative credit providers, given that the dry powder that they are sitting with. Banks being subject to regulation and its own limitations would play lesser of a role, and we would see the alternative credit providers playing a much bigger and dominant role in many large insolvencies. And of course, hopefully we would see much more cooperation and coordination among the jurisdictions across the globe, providing for better returns for creditors internationally.